everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Just Your Board podcast. We got waivers here today. Will and Steve with you. Will, how you doing, man?
Steve, it's a pretty dark day. Dark day.
Is it a dark day?
0-3 in our work league. The Phillies and Eagles both decided to end their seasons on the same day yesterday. So it's pretty bleak here in this area. I got a couple other fantasy teams that aren't doing too bad, but this work league where I have to sit here and now hear you be 0-3 and continue to win, I'm sure, the rest of the season, and I'm just sitting here floundering.
Yeah, it's I think I don't remember if it was week 1 or week 2, but I mentioned talking to my mom about the game. I think it was week 1. I talked to her yesterday. She's like, "Oh my god, we suck. We'll probably end up tying today." And lo and behold, there it is. Getting the tie against Cincinnati. Yeah, that was a mess, man.
Called it on that last drive. I was like, they're going to go down here and score. And Doug Peterson has been a guy that is ballsy and will make, go for the fourth down. And I was like, he's going to go for 2, or he needs to go for 2, because he has gone for 2 a couple times. He lost to the Ravens in a game where he went for 2 to win it a couple years ago. And man, as soon as they got down there, I was like, they need to go for 2. And of course they don't. And the end of the game was just sad. I don't know how that happens, but long story short, they should have went for 2.
What a mess, man. What a shame. I mean, we had a lot of confidence in Wentz this year.
Fantasy assets that I think a lot of people were relying on that team.
Yeah. I mean, you had Goddard go down in our work league, right?
0-3, so not looking too good there anyway. But I think there's some tight ends maybe that I'll be able to pick up here.
Yeah, we'll talk about some. Cool. Well, you ready to go ahead and jump into it?
Yeah. Let's get this started.
Cool. Well, we'll start with a big one. Rostered in 63% of leagues, so still available for a fair share of people. But Jared Goff, another great week. He's got the Giants this week, which is just a smash matchup. But I think last week he put up like 29.9 points. This week over 30 again. Jared Goff, if you swung and missed on a quarterback late, he's a must-add, right?
I think he's, at this point, unless you get a terrible matchup, which this one wasn't a great matchup, you gotta, give him a shot. I really like the Giants matchup. I do worry because I believe I'd heard that they are one of the heavier run teams in the league. And game script seems like that could be a really good game script for their running backs. So you're going to have to hope Goff, can get in the end zone early. But I do think it'll be a, good efficient game for him. I don't know, unless he can get, 3 first half touchdown passes, that he's going to have that boom potential. But you never know. Some teams tend to, keep firing until midway through the fourth quarter. So there's a chance that they could just come out and try to blow the doors off, especially probably pretty angry after the Buffalo game this week and how that ended. Yeah,
and you see that sometimes with these matchups where it looks like it's the greatest matchup in the world, but, the first 2 touchdowns of the game, someone gets stopped on the 1-yard line and then they run it in, and then there's a defensive touchdown. Suddenly they're up 21-0 and they just run the ball the rest of the time, and, your quarterback isn't the greatest. That happens from time to time, unfortunately. So it could happen here.
Yeah.
But, even if so, if you swung and miss a quarterback, he's a great ad. With that mind, you're not spending a lot on him, right?
No, I mean, like even, in hindsight, if you could, know what Lamar Jackson was going to do, right, you're going to drop a ton on him. But even going into that, after week 1, I guess that would be last year or 2 years ago now?
Last year.
Well, yeah. So he's okay that first year. And same thing with Mahomes, right? Going into their first year, you're even those guys that hindsight, are going to blow up. That's probably the only way that you would spend a lot of money on a quarterback. I'm sure most people got them for $5 to $10 on their fab budgets. So yeah, I mean, I'm not spending too much on any of these guys we're going to talk about here, but I think Goff's probably the guy that has a good matchup and is going to be able to be used going forward. I mean, he's got Washington the week after the Giants, so you got at least 2 weeks here that you'll be able to stream him.
Yeah, and another guy, if Goff isn't available, because again, roster in 63% of leagues, Fitzpatrick has Seattle, and Seattle's been getting demolished on the defensive side. And I mean, Fitzpatrick could solve that problem for them and throw 4 picks, or he could just, light the field on fire. So he's, if you can't get Goff, you can flip a couple bucks on Patrick, right? And buy another week.
I mean, it's a risk. Because I was looking at that too. Like, man, if you need a quarterback, Fitzpatrick's, definitely an option. You don't know what you're going to get. As you mentioned, he could come out and toss a couple picks. He could come out and have a good game like he did last week. But Seattle's also kind of one of those teams that I feel like they've got enough talent on there that they could have a big game. But so far this year, they haven't really played well. I mean, obviously you had Dallas and Atlanta were 2 of your 3 opponents so far. So that's not going to make it, any easier when you're playing against pretty powerful offenses like that. But I think, both him and the defense could be potential options that you could use the Seattle defense this week in a pinch, especially if you're streaming either of the positions.
Yeah, agreed. And then, the rest of them, there's definitely kind of a tier break here. You got Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, Nick Foles, Kirk Cousins. Anyone there interest you a lot, or you think it's going to be worthy of an ad here?
I don't know. I'm still unsure on Herbert. Carr's been good, but he's got Buffalo coming up. And, granted, we saw them let up a pretty big comeback to the Rams, but I don't know that I can trust him.
Big difference between Goff and the Rams offense and Carr, right?
Yeah. Although, Carr has been playing well. I got to give it to him.
Yeah, and I like Carr.
And
I
the
like
offense
Carr, but
overall has been playing pretty good. I think he had 19 in our league this week, 27 the previous week, and 15 that first week. So, yeah, but he's got Buffalo, Kansas City, and then the bye. So maybe not the best just situation because you're going to have to get another quarterback in a few weeks. Foles is interesting though, man. I don't know that you can rely on him for the whole year, but he's usually good for a nice little 4-game stretch. And he had 23 in our 6-point touchdown league, and he played about a half. And he does have Indy, Tampa, and Carolina coming up. So I think Tampa and Carolina are statistically tough, but maybe, I don't know if that's just early season that we've seen. But he could be an option for you for Chicago. And I don't know, do you think do you think Cousins, finally got himself unlocked with Justin Jefferson, another guy we're going to talk about in a few minutes?
No, not necessarily. I think it's just going to be, one of those years. And I guess we've seen it in the past with Cousins where he's going to have really good games because he's Kirk Cousins. He's got the weapons and he's a talented quarterback. But there's going to be games where he disappears because it's a running-oriented offense. Now, week 2 is something else because he just played terribly.
Negative score.
It's going to be up and down.
First time I've seen that in a while.
It's going to be hard to predict. Foles, he kind of reminds you of like Alex Smith back in the day where he'll be fine. Probably won't lose you anything. He's not going to go out. He could go out and win you, but again, it's going to be hard to predict.
Good matchup for him.
Herbert, I like Herbert for a dynasty standpoint. He's looked good. Yeah. He's good for the Chargers offense as a whole. I don't think I would ever start him. And he's another one where I don't think you're ever going to be able to predict his games, when he's going to perform really well or not.
So most of these guys, I think we're looking at, hey, if you have a good matchup like Goff or Fitzpatrick this week, you can roll with them. The other 4, maybe. I mean, I know Indy's banged up, but they still played pretty well, scored 2 touchdowns on defense on pick sixes this week. Now, one interesting one, if you do need to stream for this week, Cousins does go against Houston, and Houston's defense has been pretty bad this year, and Minnesota's defense hasn't been great either. So could be a game where both Watson and Cousins are usable.
Yeah, 100%. If you're in a league where you're one quarterback, but a lot of teams roster a second quarterback because they just want somebody on their bench and there's not a lot available, Cousins would be my guy out of these 4 because of that matchup. That's a pretty good matchup. Yeah. And, to me, he's got the higher upside than all of these guys. And probably a safer floor as well, because I obviously I'm throwing out week 2. I think that's a massive outlier, but I think he's the safer floor. Carr's floor we've seen before. It isn't that great. Herbert's a rookie. His floor is 4 picks and he looks terrible. Foles' floor is he looks bad and they go back to Trubisky. And that's just a flip-flop back and forth situation. I think Cousins' floor is, at least a touchdown and 250 or something. So I'd be good with that
Yeah, I
matchup.
think really just Goff and Fitzpatrick, and then maybe Cousins are the guys you're looking at and hoping to grab if they're available in your league this week.
Yep, absolutely. So, ready to turn to the running back
Yeah,
position?
yeah, slightly more exciting here. Not as crazy injury wise as last week, but we still have a couple of guys that their ownership rostership isn't super high. But yeah, we'll have to wade through and find out what's trash and what's treasure here.
Yeah, the big one on everyone's mind after this week is going to be Burkhead, right? He's owning 11% of league, so he's out there if you want to take your shot there. Me personally, I mean, we see this stuff from Burkhead. He comes out, he gets 3 touchdowns, and then he disappears. You know, that's just how he operates. You got to look at Cam Newton. He didn't get any touchdown or any rushing touchdowns. That's going to revert, more times than it's
Yeah,
not. It's not going to be
at least
Burkhead.
we
So,
hope for our dynasty league.
yeah, right. Uh, so that's gonna be a hard pass. I mean, if you're really desperate at the running back position, he's a fine ad because Sony's always an injury away, but Sony looked good this week too. I think he was over 100. So he's going to be hard to predict. He's not a bad ad because he can have games like this if you need a desperation guy at the running back position. But I'm not paying anything more than a few bucks for him, and I'd rather not do that. How about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns this week, but he's had 7, 6, and 6 when it comes to carries through 3 games, and he hasn't been great. He didn't have any targets in week 1, 4 catches on 6 targets for week 2, and then 7 catches for 10 targets. So, a 13 touch, game high. But then he, totals 98 yards, which isn't bad, but the touchdowns are what you're going to be banking on. Granted, this coming week, if you are in injury hell and you really need an upside play, he does have Kansas City, so it could be a game where they need to score. But that still seems like a little bit of a reach. But depending on what's out there, and if you really are desperate, he's a guy that you could put in and hope for a high ceiling. But floor, I guess we're just not sure how that would be.
Another guy that did a lot of his damage in the end zone, Jeff Wilson Jr., San Francisco, owned by 22%. I'm kind of surprised that he has a higher ownership than Burkhead, but I guess people just scooped him up after the injuries to Coleman and Mostert.
Probably this week was the big change there.
Yeah, he probably went from 0 to 22.
Yeah.
He's got Philly this week. You interested?
I think surface level, yeah. I mean, especially with McKinnon potentially injured. We'll see. It all depends on who else is playing. I think depending on who's there, if it's him and one other back like McKinnon, sure, I'll roll the dice with him. He had a high floor, right? He had 12 carries, 3 targets when it comes to touches, but he had 12 carries for 15 yards, and 3 catches for 54 is awesome. 2 touchdowns helps, but he needs to be either the guy or one of 2, because you're really going to be needing a touchdown for him to be able to return what you're hoping for.
Yeah, and I think you should add him. If you need running back help, you should flip a few bucks and add him, because there's no guarantee that McKinnon plays, and if McKinnon doesn't play, I don't know what happens there. It's either him or Hasty. If you're unfamiliar with Hasty, who's undrafted, right? Or they drafted
him and Ahmad, Salvin Ahmad, I believe, were 2 either undrafted or very late round picks that the Niners got.
Yeah, and they activated Hasty for last week. He saw some play. I think he got like 3 carries or something. So you might see the same situation where Hasty ends up being the starting running back, and Wilson is still just used on the goal line. I don't know. Or maybe it's just Wilson. But, McKinnon's out, and it confirms that Wilson's the starter. That's going to be a valuable starter to have. I'm not going to pass it up.
No.
I don't think I'd pay more than like 5%
good
for
running team. But we'll have to see. Do you have any insider info there as to all of the running back injuries and who you think is going to play this week with Wilson?
I think McKinnon plays. They haven't said anything, but I think he plays. And if he plays, I would be fine starting him. He was looking real good yesterday before he went down. So I'd have no issue starting him and really holding him. I think, given how well he played yesterday, I think he played really well. He's carving out that pass catching role. He had some great catches yesterday. There could be some long-term value there.
What do you think about Mostert, though? It sounded like Coleman's was a little more serious than Mostert's. So do you think Mostert has a chance at playing?
Yeah, Coleman, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks or 4 or 6. He's done for a while. Mostert, I don't think he plays this week. I think there's a potential. I don't recall anymore, but I think he was like a probably going to miss a couple weeks, but could come back a little earlier. Let me see and just do a quick gut check on that right here.
Make
Yeah,
note
the
that
timetable is
that is the night game too.
Yeah, so that helps. The timetable was unclear. Yeah, so not a lot of info there. I think they give him another week, but we'll see. Hopefully more information comes out.
So next up, we have probably the guy here that I imagine we may spend most of our budget on out of the group here at running back is Myles Gaskin, Miami. We talked about him a little bit last week, but he got the carries again this week, going up against Seattle, and a game that they're probably going to have to score and likely be throwing the ball a good bit. What do you think about Gaskin?
Yeah, I think we've brought him up every week this year. At some point, we're going to stop because his ownership's going to get high. But still, we're only owned at 47% of leagues. That's less than half. I'd imagine that's going to jump a lot because he got a lot of touches.
22 carries, 5 catches.
Exactly. If that continues, then he's going to be valuable. You can't just find that kind of stuff on the waiver wire. Seattle again has been giving up points. It could be a valuable matchup for him. It'd be a risky thing to do. Like, I'd be scared to do it because I feel like he could disappear. And with Jordan Howard there, I don't know what his touchdown upside is.
They're limited there unless they change their ways. It sounds like Howard is the touchdown guy, so that's really going to be where the flow is in Gaskin.
Yeah, that's going to hurt. But he's still starting running back. He's getting a lot of touches. I mean, at this point, we've seen it for a few weeks now. I'm paying, I guess, 20% or more if he's available.
Yeah, I think he's probably the only one here I'd be considering, 20 or north. Most of these other guys, I'll throw between 5 and 10, maybe Wilson somewhere between 10 and 20, but the rest of the guys we're going to talk about here, still are just more upside shots.
Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll lump the next two together with the Carson injury. So good news, nothing was torn, but yeah, Carlos Hyde, DJ Dallas sitting there, ownership 2% and 0% respectively. Are you taking a shot on either of them? And if so, which one?
I feel like I probably, put a claim in for both Hyde and Dallas, maybe put a couple extra dollars on Hyde, but I'm not spending more than $5 or $6 on Hyde, and probably no more than 2 or 3 on Dallas. Dallas, you're hoping he can flash and take command of a role even when Carson gets back, whereas Hyde is looking like a guy that you can play this week, but he's a stopgap until Chris Carson's back, which they haven't ruled him out this week. They said it's a mild sprain, so it's probably one of the best rulings that they've had on Carson. So there's a chance neither of these guys get the boost without Carson, but I'd imagine he probably misses a week or two to be safe because it's a pretty good Seahawks team. They want to make sure he's good for the stretch run.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not super excited with either of them. If I need a start, I'm a Barkley owner or something like that, and I'm still trying to plug the hole, I'd be putting my bet on Hyde, and I'd be willing to put 5% down to try to buy myself a week or two. Like you said, he's probably going to miss some time. If I'm good at the running back position and I have a burner, I'm cool adding DJ Dallas. I don't think I'd put anything on him, $1 or something just to make sure he gets on the roster. But he's the upside play. Like you said, he gets in there, he flashes, and he starts taking the job. And then when Carson comes back, it's a 50-50 split or something. That's kind of what you're hoping for with DJ. And if you got a roster spot to burn, I think that's a fine bet to take. But I'm not super interested in it.
No. So next two guys, interesting. We got Ryan Nall, who likely would be the next man up for Chicago. I don't know that he's much of a receiving back, so maybe they go to free agency for that type of back to fill Tariq Cohen, who I don't know if it's fully confirmed that he's going to miss the year, but it sounds like they're pretty sure he's got a torn ACL.
Yeah, I think they confirmed it.
So, I mean, maybe you throw a buck or two on him, but I'd say this more likely they go out and try to sign a more pass catching specialist to replace that Cohen role. Do they have anybody else on the roster? Wasn't there a rookie that you liked?
Artavis Pierce was an undrafted rookie. I believe he was a decent pass catcher, but I don't think he was anything out of this world. So, yeah, I don't know what you do there. I'm not touching either of them personally.
Overall, it's probably more Montgomery gets maybe more of the pass catching down work, so that could be more beneficial for him.
Yeah, or Jimmy Graham. Use your tight end for short or for some short yardage work. Yeah, no interest in either of them.
Yeah, so not much there. Maybe you want to throw $1 on him if you had Cohen, but I think probably not much. But the last one we have Brian Hill, who has been playing pretty well. Probably just as good, if not better, than Gurley in that same offense. What are you thinking there? Is you a Gurley owner or just someone looking at a guy that's producing in Hill?
I'm not that interested. If I'm a Gurley owner and I have a spot to burn, maybe. If I'm a handcuff guy, I'd rather put a bet on DJ Dallas because his opportunity is here and now. But yeah, I mean, he did good this week. He got like 9 attempts, I think, something like that, 60 yards, a touchdown, something around there. But week 1 and 2, he didn't do anything. Less than 20 yards on the ground. I think the same, like 10 yards in the air, 10 yards on the ground, something like that. Nothing super impressive. So no, unless I'm in like a super deep league and I have Gurley and I could just throw the handcuff on, I'm not interested. How about you?
Yeah, kind of right there with you. If you're in a deep redraft league, he could be an option if you have room. I think he's probably more of the guy you definitely want to go with in Dynasty if you have an option there. But like I have Gurley and I picked up Hill before the season because it seemed like he was going to be the handcuff. So it seems like more of a Dynasty play. So probably not more than $1 or $2 if you really want him in redraft. But we'll move on to wide receivers next. The big name, Justin Jefferson. Well, one of the big names here, but probably the biggest name that we haven't seen earlier. What do you think?
Yeah, he finally had his blow-up game. This is the week where you're going to have to pay up to get him. If he's not on a roster, it looks like he's rostered in 31% of leagues. He's got Houston. That's a good matchup. As far as paying goes, 10-15%. I'm typically not going to spend a ton of money on a wide receiver, especially one that's had 1 week. It's a little bit different than like McLaurin last year because McLaurin was the only guy in town on a team that was just going to throw the ball a lot. Jefferson's not the only guy in town. We got Rudolph with a nice touchdown this week. Thielen's always going to be there. It's a team that wants to run the ball. So, I don't know. He just doesn't interest me. I would drop 10 or 15% if you need a wide receiver. Like me, I have no wide receivers on my bench. I think I got one MVS. So, maybe I look at him and see if he's available and take a shot. I don't think he's available. But, a team like me, where I don't have a lot of wide receivers, I guess makes sense. But overall, I need to see more, really.
Yeah. I think he does have the opportunity to possibly be the deep threat on this team. So that's interesting. But I tend not to want to spend too much on a wide receiver. So, yeah, maybe somewhere between 5 and 15. You're probably not going to get him unless you're spending 10 or more. And I imagine someone probably pays up because of just the boom week that he had. But, yeah, I mean, I think he's got an opportunity. He looked good in kind of limited targets and snaps the first couple weeks. So maybe they're just bringing him along slowly. So if this offense has snapped out of a funk, maybe you get a long-term asset. He probably is going to have a little more up and down weeks here in his rookie season. So, I'd say probably not going to spend too much, and that's probably not going to get it done.
So next up, Will, we got Allen Lazard, owning about 49% of leagues, so 50-50 shot whether he's going to be available to you. He's got Atlanta this week, so it's going to be a great matchup. What do you think of Lazard?
I like Lazard. He seems like he's locked in as the 2, I think, to the chagrin of you and me here, who both started MVS in separate leagues. But Lazard seems like he's a guy. Now, do you trust that when Adams is healthy, the number 2 receiver for Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to get that work? I don't know. You also have a great matchup this week against Atlanta, but then a bye week coming up. You're spending up for a guy that you're going to get this week, but you're not going to have in week 5. So I don't know that I want to spend a ton just because of the risk there. but I think especially with the consistency he's had, you're going to have to pay up for him.
Yeah, I think long term, you need to be careful. He had a good week 1 and then a meh week 2. So, are you going to be able to predict the games? I don't know. Like you said, is he going to be the consistent wide receiver 2 once Adams gets back? I don't know. For this week, though, like you said, you got the bye coming up. You have Atlanta and a defense that can and has been torched over and over again. I don't know if you play Adams. Like, he was close to playing this week, I guess. He was a game time decision, right?
I think he was doubtful, but they didn't roll him out until the day of.
Yeah, so like, why? Rest him. You give him 2 weeks of rest, Atlanta, and then a bye week. Make sure he's healthy. You need him. And if that's the case, then Lazard's a great ad. And, if you're a team that's, 1-2, you need to buy yourself a win. I'm fine with that. I would rather pay for Lazard than I would Jefferson personally.
Yeah, I think I would as well. I think there's a more higher floor throughout the season, likely. Jefferson's probably going to be more boom or bust.
Okay, moving forward, we got Brandon Ayuk, San Francisco, 28%. Finally had a solid game there. Any interest with him?
I like the player, but once again, he had a pretty good game. 8 targets, 5 catches, 70 yards, 3 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown. So good production, but correct me if I'm wrong, is Debo eligible to play this week for the first time?
He is, yeah.
That's the risk. The targets may not be there as much for Ayuk. I think he's definitely worth an ad. Probably not dropping more than 10 and 10 on him, and you're probably not going to get him for that. But I just don't know that the consistency is going to be there as much with Kittle eventually coming back. No, I don't know about this week or future, but Debo coming back. The offense should get more weapons back, so maybe he has more explosive plays, but is more inconsistent.
Yeah, it's my issue is the weapons coming back. We don't really know when Debo's coming back. He's eligible to come back now, but is he ready? I don't know. I think Kittle's probably going to be back this week. So the weapons are coming back. So I'm not super interested. A couple bucks if you're desperate, but I'm going to pass. I'm personally passing on the next one too. T. Higgins. I just don't trust rookies generally. You have one good game, that doesn't mean really anything to me.
2 touchdowns too, so that that'll boost it up.
Yep, that boosts it up for sure. 5% owned, so he's out there if you want him, and he does have Jacksonville. Do you have any interest in Higgins?
Not really. I like him. There's a lot of weapons there already that are being spread out. AJ Green was being guarded by Darius Slay, so he kind of was shadowed there and shut down. So Higgins probably is a benefactor there. And they got Baltimore and Indy after Jacksonville, so could be tough sledding coming up after that. So I'll probably hold off on T. Higgins as well as our next guy, Braxton Berrios. Been going off the last, I think, week or two, but I'm going to hold off there. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, same. He's kind of your, I don't want to say garbage time because he doesn't do his damage in garbage time, but your typical wide receiver on a bad team that gets a lot of passing volume because it's a bad team.
You say that because the Jets offense, whenever they're on offense, it is garbage time.
It is. It's a 24/7 kind of garbage time with that team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame, but he's not a bad ad. Like you said, 2 good weeks in a row. Now he had those 2 weeks because he had 2 touchdowns. If he didn't, then you'd be looking at like that 6 to 8 point range, which is fine for like a flex. It's not the worst in the world, so not bad. I would be willing to throw a few bucks on him just to get somebody on the bench as like a depth play, but not overall super interested in him. The next guy is another one that I'm confused about. Anthony Miller, 46% owned. Had a good week this week. Had a terrible week 1, terrible week 2. If he's available, Will, you looking at him?
I mean, I wouldn't mind adding him with the quarterback change. Maybe, Foles has a thing for him that he's going to look his way, but he's just so up and down, so inconsistent. 5 targets, 2 catches, 40 and he scored. He had a carry. I'm not going to spend a ton on him, but he seems like Foles wants to go to him as the number 2 receiver. Granted, I think Jimmy Graham's probably going to be the big touchdown benefactor. Miller's going to be the guy you're banking on a touchdown for every week. And I just want more consistency in targets for wide receivers for me.
Yeah, I liked him coming out. The first 2 weeks have scared me. If he's available, I would definitely add him. if I got a spot, because the upside's there. As we said all offseason during our mocks, he was a wide receiver 2, I believe. I'm kind of forgetting. I feel like he was a wide receiver 2 over the last 5 games of the year last year. So the upside's there. If Foles likes him, that's awesome. So, worth an ad. I'd flip 5% on him or something like that. But, I need to see another week or two before I trust him and actually start putting him in my lineup. That's for sure. Tight ends,
next. Yeah.
Jimmy Graham went off, had a couple touchdowns. New quarterback
targets,
there.
6 catches. Yeah.
Yeah,
Touchdowns
9% owned.
You're going to be reliant on, but if you're in any type of PPR, 6 catches for 60 yards is solid, especially when it comes from 2 different quarterbacks. So it's being spread across. And Foles, does tend to like the tight end position as well. So I think he's probably going to be the number 2 option on the offense. It's crazy as it sounds here behind Allen Robinson. So yeah, I wouldn't mind adding him. I'm not going to spend up, but him as well as a couple of the next guys here are going to be guys that I'd probably be looking at in a work league if they're available, given that I've got or who's going to be out a few weeks. So yeah, I wouldn't mind throwing 5 or 10 on Graham.
Yeah, same boat. Like I said, maybe he's a benefactor of Cohen going down a little bit. Not that, that kind of yardage I don't think is going to lead to a lot, but in a PPR, that's a point. So, 2 more catches is 2 more points for a guy that scores typically, I don't know, without a touchdown, 4 or 5 points. That's a lot. So that's pretty nice. We had Eric Ebron that had another big week, 27% owned, so owned a little bit more, but still widely available there. Interested in Ebron at all?
I don't know. There's just so many options on that offense. And I feel like we're saying that about a lot of guys we're talking about now. But Dante Johnson hurt. Maybe they're going to have to rely on some of the other weapons. And you got Chase Claypool, a rookie. You got Washington, who's more of a deep threat. So maybe Ebron is kind of the number 2 pass-catching option in the red zone. Vance definitely had a couple targets still, though. So I'm always a little hesitant, unless it's 2 stud tight ends like the Eagles have, to start one of 2 guys that's splitting targets at his position, let alone the receiving depth that they have at wide receiver. What do you think?
Yeah, he's your typical tight end where you're banking on a touchdown. If he gets a touchdown, you got a good week. If he didn't, you ended up with 5 points. That's the way I see him. I'm not. If you need help and you like the matchup, you throw a few bucks. That's fine with me. But overall, I'm not interested.
This next guy's one that I think I'm almost a little more interested in. Robert Tonyan. I don't think he was the tight end that anybody expected. They had Sternberger from last year. They drafted a tight end, I don't know how to say his name, who was hurt this week. So they were banking on 2, but Tonyan's been the guy that's played well 2 weeks in a row now. He only had 3 targets, but he scored last week, and he came away with 5 targets, 5 catches this week and got a touchdown. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I think everybody's surprised that he is the one that's emerging and not Sternberger, but he's the same really to me as Ebron. If he doesn't get a touchdown this week, he gave you 50 yards. Cool. Last week, same thing. If he doesn't get a touchdown, 25 yards. He just falls into that category for me, and I'm just not super interested in it. Maybe this week against Atlanta, because it's Atlanta, and again, Adams could be out. That would be interesting. But overall, no, not for me.
Right, and then last one here, we got Mo Alley Cox. Any interest there?
There is more interest here. I do see some long-term viability with Mo Alley Cox, and we got a quarterback that uses the tight end a lot historically and has been using Mo Alley Cox. He's had 2 good weeks. At some point, Frank Wright's a smart man. I think you need to hand things off, and it's time to be done with Doyle. And maybe that happened this week, or maybe they're just easing Doyle in or something, but it's time to move on from that and, go with Mo Alley Cox. He seems to be overall the better option. So yeah, if I need tight end help, I'm not paying anything outrageous for him. 5-6% maybe, but if I'm going to add a tight end out of all of I'd probably add Graham first, but between Ebron, Tonyan, and Mo Alley Cox, I would probably take my shot on Mo Alley Cox. How about you?
Definitely the upside there. He's a guy that don't usually roster multiple tight ends, but he's a guy I'd almost want to stash, right? Grab him for a couple bucks, put him on your bench, and then maybe have a guy that has a little more viability. Now, you may be forced to start him. You're like most of these guys, you're banking on a touchdown, but I'd almost want to just see the way the snaps are given out at least one more week here on Indy.
And defense as well. Do you have a streamer or two that you like this week?
Yeah, I think the Broncos 36% owned. They got the Jets, so really anybody against the Jets looks great. Broncos is the big one for me. Another one that's interesting is the Cardinals. They're 43% owned. They've had a couple of decent weeks, but and scoring wise they play well. But they've got Carolina, who their offense is good. Mike Davis is running well. Obviously, doesn't look like the best matchup, so it's maybe somebody you can get for free. But if you're really strapped and there's no defenses available, I wouldn't mind plugging in the Cardinals.
Yeah, I like both of those as well. Pretty solid matchups. Carolina, a little tougher because they're not doing too bad on offense. The only other one I throw out, and it's a huge risk, would be the Seahawks. I mean, obviously, they've been getting lit up, but you're facing Miami, and that means you're facing Fitzpatrick, which means interceptions could flow. It's just how it goes. But it's a 50-50 shot. You're either going to have a great game because he's throwing 4 picks, or he's going to burn you to the ground. So, that is a real gamble there, but that's the only other one I would throw out.
Yeah, so that about wraps up the waiver show here. Good luck, everybody, on your waiver claims, and we'll talk to you in a couple days.
Yeah, tune on Thursday for the Start Sit episode. In the meantime, trust your board.